It's the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, we're continuing to analyze the draft prospects for the upcoming 2025 NFL draft being held in Green Bay this April. In this episode, we'll discuss the prospects at the defensive tackle position. This is a very deep group with plenty of day one potential. The Detroit Lions are absolutely in the market for a defensive tackle, with DJ Reader on the last year of his contract, along with the pending free agency of Levi Onwuzurike. We'll discuss the prospects and where we think they'll land on draft day next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Jasinski-Drew. It's March 3rd, 2025, post-NFL Combine. I'm joined by Coach Andy Shield. We're going to be talking about the defensive tackle positional group today and the prospects there. Coach, how you doing?
Oh, near and dear to my heart. This is the position that I played. So, and it's a fun one to talk about. It's super, super important. You want to defend a running quarterback better, Drew? Have a defensive line that does not yield. It can two-gap and pinch and consolidate and close and narrow things so he can't gain between the tackles. He can't turn his shoulders. And that's something that can be done here, like the old school run stopping that you need and the guys that can get the tush-push shut down and that kind of thing. Talk about a very, very valuable piece to a team. A team that usually has a great defensive line, Drew, wins some football games. And what do the Philadelphia Eagles have?
Great defensive line. You got it. Yep. Hey, our Detroit Lions do too. Even with all the injuries they had last year, they still were so deep. They were able to finish 15-2. Yeah, dropped out in the playoffs early, unfortunately, but you don't get 15-2 on accident. That's not a joke. You're not a fake. You're real.
No, and to your point, Drew, you're 100% right. And we really had to kind of squeeze the lemon, so to speak, and get as much out of the position group and out of the room we could. We had to do some signings at the end and bring some different guys in to finish things up for us. And there's going to be some free agency void here too. This is certainly a position of need for the Detroit Lions in this draft. I really do. At some point in time, we could probably look at all 3 days.
Oh, absolutely.
It could be addressed at any point.
I mean, do they have a starting four? Yeah. Hutchinson, McNeil, Reader, Zadarius Smith. They have a starting four. But again, Smith is a free agent after next year. Reader's a free agent after next year. Onwuzurike may not be back. He's a free agent now. Broderick Martin, who knows what's going on there. So
Kaminsky.
He's a free agent, and he didn't play all last year. So there's holes to fill and eventually starting positions to fill. So if you can do it now, do it now. And that's why we're talking about it. So let's jump into the top 20, Coach. Let's bring them up here. Our top 20 defensive tackles. As always, we start from the bottom right and go up to the left. Coach, take it away.
We have former Michigan State Spartan in at number 20, Simeon Barrow Jr. He finished up over at the U with Miami. This is a great football player, a guy that did some really, really good things in East Lansing and down in Coral Gables. He's in at number 20. At 19 is a defensive tackle, defensive end type hybrid, Jordan Birch out of Oregon. And at 18, defensive tackle for the national champion Buckeyes out of Ohio State, Ty Hamilton. At 17, Tonka Hemingway out of South Carolina, one of a couple South Carolina Gamecock defensive tackles that we'll be talking about today. We have a blue blood here at 16, Drew, out of the University of Notre Dame, and Howard Cross III. At 15, this is a guy that we'll also feature and talk about a little bit, I have a feeling, in the edge position because he's an edge defensive tackle hybrid. That's Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M. And at 15, at 14 is Big Ty Robinson out of Nebraska, hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle as well. He's an interesting prospect for day 3, I think, Drew. Yeah. And at number, 13 is Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech, good-looking player there. And another guy that's a defensive end, defensive tackle hybrid that absolutely skyrocketed himself and some phenomenal work at the combine is Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. Somebody that had been talked about a little bit towards the end of day 1, definitely probably sitting there and climbing now here as we move forward a little bit here. In at 11, we have C.J. West out of Indiana. Another fine guy prospect of that great Indiana football team. Into the top 10, a guy I think we're going to be talking about here in a little bit as a dark horse, Drew, J.J. Pegues out of Ole Miss. And at 9, Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. Another guy we're talking about guys that could be talking about on day 2, and they're not even really going to be featured on this. So this is a deep position group. But in our top 8, into the featured group, the first one will be our second South Carolina defensive tackle on our top 20, TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. And at 7, big Alfred Collins out of Texas. And at 6, a Detroit product. And we're talking about the big 6'7", 345-pounder Deion Walker out of Kentucky. Into the top 5, another Detroit area prospect and another former Michigan State Spartan, Derek Harmon out of Oregon. At 4, phenomenal player here, and this is a guy we might be talking about wearing Honolulu blue and silver, and that's Tyleik Williams out of the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Our top 3, 2 of which I think any Lions fan should salivate. The first of which would be a real homegrown hero, 2023 national champion, Kenneth Grant out of the University of Michigan. And at number 2, and he's an impressive looking player, going to be talking about him in a minute here, Drew, is Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. And at number 1, a guy we're not going to be able to get our hands on, is my friend. He is going in the top 10. And that is out of the University of Michigan, Mason Graham, our number 1 defensive tackle prospect for the 2025 draft.
Coach, that is a phenomenal list, and I will let you do the honor of introducing Mr. Graham. Up next is our number 1 prospect.
Will be my pleasure, Drew. This kid was an absolute joy to watch play. Very much under the radar, as were a lot of Coach Harbaugh's recruits from this, great era of playoff teams that he had there these last 3 years that he was at the University of Michigan. And Mason Graham was certainly one of them. 6'3", 320-pound junior out of Anaheim, California. He played at Servite High School. One of the great programs out west. Has a big wrestling background, Drew. He's a guy that was also an all-state wrestler in the state of California, so he knows how to use those hands and knows how to leverage that body. He's a 2-time All-American and a 2-time All-Big Ten selection. He was a 2022 freshman All-American. He was the 2024 Rose Bowl Defensive Most Valuable Player as a sophomore. He wasn't quite 20 years old yet. Like you said, 2023, 2024 national champion out of, in that great team 144 that, everybody, I don't care what your affiliations are here in the Sports Peninsula, that is one of the finest championship teams our state has ever had, was that 2023, 2024 Michigan team, and he was an anchor on that defense. 17 career tackles for loss, 47 career quarterback hurries. Mason Graham's the real deal, Drew. He's the absolute real deal. Going to be a starter day 1. Going to be a starter day 1.
Yeah, and there's a lot to like about Mason Graham. His strengths, well, he has extremely impressive mobility and movement skills. And he's 320 pounds, Coach, and this guy moves like he's 270. Honestly, he's rocked up. I mean, he's a rocked up guy. He's truly alignment versatile along the interior. He can play the one gap. He can even line up over to center if necessary. He's just so good. He's a hands assassin. And I know, Coach, it's coached up, but you've got to be so comfortable and fluid, and it's got to come so natural to be that good with your hands. And I mean, he's just quick. He's strong. I love watching him do like deconstruct blocks in essence at the line. It's a beautiful thing. He's a wrestler at heart, like you said. He's got explosive strength. He has extraordinary leverage. He's tremendously coached in season. He's a student of the game, and you can tell that, right? Just watching how he looks. You don't do what he did at that young of an age unless you really are. You have a high football IQ, and he's a fluid slanter and stunter, which is so important, especially in the NFL. That translates so well into the NFL, Coach. And there's no doubt in my mind this is a top 10 pick. Wouldn't surprise me. I think he's a top 5 talent, Coach, but I think because of the quarterback needs and some of the skill players at the top of this draft, I think that's what might put him into the between 6 and 10. But Mason Graham is, like you said, day 1 starter, and has Pro Bowl potential written all over him. What does he need to work on, Coach?
Well, this is a bit of splitting hairs because I tell you what, in some defensive schemes, Drew, what he does is a primary block destroyer and a gap reducer and a two-gap player. And maybe it's not stat sheet specific, and he is blowing up the QB hits and the sacks and having a dozen TFLs a season. But I tell you what, your team defense against the run is in the top 3 or top 2. Your team total defense and pressures up front are in the top 5, top 6. And you're a very, very efficient defense with a player like Mason Graham. Yeah, he's a block destroyer before he's a playmaker. He's going to do those kinds of things. If you're looking for a guy that's going to be really ripping off blocks and being an absolute menace in the backfield, Mason Graham is not necessarily your type of defensive tackle. But if you want to win and play great defense and get to play in February, Mason Graham is your type of defensive tackle. And, that's more getting back to the strengths. I can't do this. I got to talk about weaknesses, Drew. That's my job. So I'm going to get back to it. He hits more base hits than doubles than homers in the pass rush game. Again, he's not going to be statistically just absolutely devouring sacks from the interior. He's a guy that's going to hurry QBs. He's going to flush. He's going to get, force incompletions. That's what he's going to do in his pass rush repertoire, at least at first. Pad level will elevate as, we get through a game. That's a general rule for a lot of guys. These guys are so big at 6'3", 320, and he's not even all that big at 6'3", 320 anymore, Drew. We're going to talk about a lot bigger guys. He's not the longest prospect. He's kind of that thicker kind of, reducer, wide body type. Will NFL offensive line length, and, give them the leverageability that's going to be an issue for him at times? Maybe at times. But I tell you what, this is the NFL. Is he going to lose reps anyway? Yes. Is that going to make him a bust? No. Mason Graham's going to be a winner for somebody. He's going to be a winner for somebody, Drew. And he's that alignment versatility. We're going to try to talk about, certain techniques, and we're going to give you a number. Well, 0 to 5 are what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about 0 to 5 techniques. The 0 would be somebody that's lined up straight up over the center. Okay, and we head on out, and there's all sorts of fractional numbers we could get into, but the 5 would be somebody that would be on the outside eye of the offensive tackle. So Mason Graham is a guy that can line up from head up the center to outside eye of an offensive tackle. Folks, he can span the whole interior line. This is a guy that you center your defensive line room around.
I would love him in Detroit, but yeah, no way he's going to be there at 28. No way.
Maybe you're free agents 5 or 6, 7 years down the road.
Exactly. You got to love Mason Graham. And that's not in-state bias either. This guy's the real deal. And I loved his answer at the Combine when he was asked about, I forget exactly how the question was phrased, but he's like, just watch the Ohio State game tape and you'll know what I'm all about. And it's like,
yeah, I think it was something like, is there any certain games that come to mind or as ones that, people should watch, and really getting a feel for the kind of player you are? You can always throw the Ohio State game in. He said something like that. It was great. So
beautiful.
I heard what you heard too.
Let's talk about our number 2 prospect, and that is Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. The defensive tackle is 6'3", 305-pound junior. Coach is our number 2 prospect. It's a 5-star prospect from Powell, Tennessee. Ran a 4.95 40. He transferred from Texas A&M. Had 11 tackles for loss and 5 sacks in 22 games for the A&M Aggies. In 2024, he's All-American for Ole Miss. He's also All-SEC. He has 25 career tackles for loss and 46 career quarterback hurries. So, Coach, Walter Nolan gets after the quarterback, and there's a lot to like about Walter Nolan. Let's talk about it.
Transferred from Texas A&M. On our top 20, we have Shamar Stewart. We have Shamar Turner. We are going to, when we go over edges, we're going to feature Nick Scouten as a guy that's probably on the Lions list too. That's very possibly. That's 3 Texas A&M. And now a former Texas A&M player and Walter Nolan. That school did some recruiting a couple years ago, Drew. He's another one of these guys that's truly alignment versatile. He can line up from that 0 technique to that 5 technique, like we were talking about with Mason Graham. He can do the same thing. He has the athletic talent and the football talent to do so. He's a competitor. He's got that high running motor. He's a very engaged competitor. He's going at it, and that's the mentality you have to take when you play defensive line at the highest level or at any level. It's a very passionate position, and he brings it every rep. A relentless plan executor. I mean, he is working rips, working arm overs, twisting, getting himself skinny, flipping hips. All the little technical little nuances. Kind of, we saw like an Aaron Donald is a processor extraordinaire. You got a guy like Walter Nolan that works that way. Not calling him Aaron Donald, but he tries to work and operate that way, which is a good way to be. Extremely physical, very violent hand puncher and hand striker. He's another leverage warrior like Mason Graham. He's going to get underneath pad level. You can see it right there. That clip as he goes to pursue, Nussmeier against LSU. You can see him get under. He's underneath and working underneath the block. That's leverage. He's got leverage on that blocker in that photo right there.
And he's ripping with that left arm.
He's ripping underneath it and fighting through, and going to probably get a shot on old Nussmeier there. Great quickness and explosive get off. He can really come out of a stance and burst. Highly disruptive reputation as a defensive lineman in the SEC and 2 different schools. Really came into his own with the Rebels here at Ole Miss, but really had to set that foundation with all that other talent down in College Station, Texas beforehand. Really, really intriguing prospect, one of which has been talked about with the Detroit Lions. He has been linked to somebody that the Detroit Lions were very much familiar with, and a guy that you could see. There's some things to work on, Drew. Does Walter got some things he's got to look at?
Yeah, a little bit, but I'll tell you what, he's a top 10 talent, and I'm glad the Lions are talking to him, but I'm not sure how they're going to manage to get him. I'll be honest with you. I just don't think he'll be available. But man, he is something else. But does need to work on some things. We talked about pad level. We've talked about it a lot with a lot of the linemen we've talked about. Gets a little too high too often. So that's less about fatigue and more about technique and just maybe a little more discipline at that. And that's something he can work on. You think a guy like Walter Nolan can be coached up in that?
Oh, yeah. That's something you can refine. Definitely. Pad level is definitely something that you can improve.
So, again, it's something he has to work on, but, it's something he's proven. The guy's a winner, and he's a great football player. He will get it. But it is something he has to work on right now, and it's something that's showing up on tape. So it's definitely needs to be mentioned. He's freelance from scheme responsibilities at times. We've seen this all the time, Coach. The older you get and the higher the level you play at, the less you can do that, and that's a mindset, and it's certainly something that can be broken. But at the end of the day, any player has to do their job. And don't try to be a hero necessarily all the time. But that's something Walter Nolan needs to work on. But he has the ability to be a game changer, and that's where the temptation comes in. So that's just something he's going to have to be a little more disciplined, more fundamentally sound. He's not a long prospect. Neither is Mason Graham, though, like you said earlier. He's not as good of a hand fighter as Graham. So that's something there. That's what really that's a big thing that separates Mason Graham from the pack, in my view, and I think in yours too, Coach. His technique and gap discipline is a must for him. So again, you stop the freelancing, you solve that problem right there. You become gap disciplined, and you have to do that and stick to it. And I think he will do that. And he may need a little grooming under fire. So it's possible he's more of a heavy rotation guy versus an instant starter. But I think he's got the talent and ability to be an instant starter, Coach. And I think in the right situation, he absolutely will flourish. I love Walter Nolan. What I like about most of the things we talked about, what he needs to work on, that he can work on them and get better at. Any thoughts on Nolan before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna take some hard falls while he's cutting his teeth a little bit, because he's gonna play an awful lot. He's too talented not to, and he is going to be rotational. They're gonna have to hide and protect him a little bit to get some of these these nuances worked out. He just plays a little bit more raw than what a Mason Graham plays like. Very, very similar play style. They play very similar. Graham might be just a skosh bigger, and he's a lot more technical and disciplined than Walter Nolan is. But Walter Nolan has all the upside. We're talking about a great kid that if he buys into the sport of football, it's going to pay him very, very well. Walter Nolan's ceiling could keep climbing, and he could be that perennial Pro Bowl type player himself. Going to be interesting to see. I think you're probably correct too, Drew. I think algorithms had Walter Nolan a little bit lower. I think we're talking about a guy that is probably middle 20s to middle teens to middle 20s in that first round. Probably just out of reach of the Detroit Lions, I think.
Yeah, I think
but
you're
certainly
right.
A guy that they would look at.
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
a little bit more attainable probably than Mason Graham, who, like you had said, is probably somewhere 5 to 10.
Yeah, makes sense. Hey, Coach, let's talk about our number 3 prospect. We're going to go back to AA.
Getting back to the great state of Michigan and the great city of Ann Arbor and the great school, the University of Michigan. We're talking about Kenneth Grant, our second defensive tackle from the University of Michigan in the top 3. So, I mean, that's just how good they've had as a tandem. 6'3", 340-pound junior, Kenneth Grant. From Merrillville, Indiana, another guy that also ran a 4.95 40 at 340 pounds. He came to Ann Arbor out of Merrillville. He weighed 360 when he showed up to Ann Arbor. So he worked on himself a little bit, but this is a very, very big human being. 2024 All-American, 2-time All-Big Ten selection. He was a part of that national championship team from a year ago. 12 career pass deflections. So he's very, very active as a pass rusher, maybe not necessarily hitting home and always getting the hurries, although he has 40 career hurries himself, but he has 12 career pass deflections. So he's very active at the line of scrimmage. 17 career tackles for loss and sacks combined. So he's done some things in the backfield. Kenneth Grant Jr., Drew, is not leaving the first day of this draft.
I agree. And I think he's definitely in play for the Lions. Although I would be pleasantly surprised if he's available at 28, to be honest with you. I think that much of him, but he could be. And the more quarterback needy teams or maybe receiver or running back needy teams pick above them, guys like Kenneth Grant start falling back to you. And that's a beautiful thing. Falling back in the first round, mind you. He ain't leaving the first round. I agree. His strengths, though, he's an excellent special teams defensive lineman. So folks may say, "Oh, well, big deal." Well, it is a big deal because you're on punt coverage, and you're blocking for punts, you're blocking for field goals and extra points. That's huge. And but what I like about Kenneth Grant, like you said, he's so active. He's seasoned and well coached. He's a product of that Michigan defense. He's shown it. He's grown every year. In terms of maturity and football IQ, he's reduced his size. Like you said, Coach, he's dropped 20 pounds, which is beautiful, which shows he's working. And he's maintained that. It hasn't been this up and down yo-yo thing. It's gotten down there. He stayed pretty solid there. He's a natural run anchor inside. Gets a lot of big reps against big offensive line prospects in big games. He's played in playoff games. He's played in a national title game. He played against Alabama in the Hall, was that, well, not the Hall of Fame Bowl anymore. What's it called now? If you're sponsoring it,
the Citrus Burr. I don't know, the USAA Bowl. I don't know.
Against Alabama. I mean, but he's faced there you go. He's faced very stiff competition in the Big Ten as well as in playoff games. He's seasoned. He's elite and unmatched. He has elite and unmatched athleticism in this class. With his size and athleticism, he's a marvel. He has extremely active hands and he has great pass reaction, hence the blocks. That's huge. Like you said, Coach, even if you don't get home, if you're disrupting the quarterback and you're forcing bad throws, you're deflecting passes, we've seen that. That's huge. You can't beat that. And also, when I'm talking about special teams, though, you're lining up your with those active hands, blocking field goal attempts, getting penetration, allowing guys to get in and block punts. Kenneth Grant's just he's a special player. He really is. And he's a technician of a block destructor and a rush planner. I like that because he's not a one-trick guy, but he's definitely systemic in what he's going to do. He's going to destroy the block, and then he's going to plan the rush. That's nothing wrong with that. What I like about him, too, is he's very good in the run game, too. Kenneth Grant is so good. There's two guys ahead of him still, and that just speaks how deep this defensive tackle class is, Coach. I love Kenneth Grant, and I would love him in Detroit. Not sure he'll be there as an option, but maybe they can move up like they did last year to get Terry and Arnold. I don't know, but Kenneth Grant's a good one. What does he need to work on?
Well, he is a great block destructor, but again, we're not talking about the longest prospect. He doesn't play with the greatest leverage sometimes. And some longer, real good defensive or offensive tackles, rather, and long guards have taken him on some rides, and he can get reached, and that's a no-no. You can't have that. That is something that the outside zone and the stretch play and a lot of the RPO type stuff all has that kind of block scheme to it. So, I mean, you've got to be able to be good at that blocking that blocking scheme, or else you're going to be penned inside the defense, and you'll be no good to anything that's really attacking towards the perimeter. Something he's got to work on, or it's going to limit where he can be lined up on the field. Got to keep that pad level getting lower. I mean, again, he's another guy. He's a big guy, 340 pounds. You're going to get a little higher in your pad level, but he's got to probably work on that as a refinement in the way he comes out of his stance as well, too. He needs to win to get off. That's got to happen. If he does not win, if he does not win, getting off and out of his stance and into his blocker, he is going to have trouble. He's going to get taken for a ride. He's going to get lifted. He's going to lose leverage. He's going to be a problem, and it's going to be a problem for him. So that's where he has got to be just. And hey, he could play in his 12th year, be the first guy getting off the ball still. So that's something that he's just got to pride himself in. He's a streaky playmaker. There's going to be sometimes he's going to make huge plays. Oh, Kenneth Grant's brilliant, and then you won't see him again for. He'll be out there doing things, but he won't make another play again for 2 weeks. He can be a guy that becomes a little bit more of that block destructor. He needs to develop more of consistency in his punch placement, because his hands can get a little bit all over the place, and what that's just going to cause you to get blocked. That's just going to cause you to get blocked if you're a little inconsistent there. The heavier he gets, the slower he gets, the worse he is off the ball. The worse he is off the ball, he's not as effective as a player. So, I mean, he's not a guy that can, be a Damon Harris and, snacks and get himself at 370, 380 and play football. It's not going to happen. He has got to get him, keep himself under 350 pounds. And, in the end, is he going to be anything more than a 0 or 1 technique, a guy that's going to just be playing off of a center or a guard, and that can help you out on special teams on extra points and field goals a little bit? If so, that could be a real productive football player still. But I think, the ceiling could be a little bit higher for Kenneth Grant. As far as the Detroit Lions are concerned, Drew, oh, yes, I'm interested. I am interested. He's not, I wouldn't call him a fallback plan, but I think he is surely, very possibly, going to be in and around that 28th pick. I think there's a really, really good chance of that. It will just depends what other kind of value is on the table at that. Kenneth Grant is a guy that I would suspect is going to go somewhere mid-20s to one of the first players called on Friday. That's where I think it could go for Kenneth Grant, just because some of inconsistencies there.
Yeah, and to your point, if teams are looking for the more versatile type lineman, and a lot of teams are, the Lions are one of them. There's no doubt about that. That could be why Grant would slip, but it's not because he's not an outstanding football player. Just he may not fit the exact need of certain teams, is what it is. But let's talk about the number 4 guy, and this is a guy that I really think will be available at 28, and it's someone the Lions definitely need to look at. Tyleik Williams. I know it's out of the Ohio State University, but it's okay because it's all good in the NFL. But 6'3", 334-pound senior. He's from Manassas, Virginia. Also came to Columbus at 360 pounds as well. So it's another guy who was able to get himself disciplined and
a 4.6,
840. That's outstanding. That is outstanding, and it jumps off the page. To be that big, that strong, and that fast, look out. 3-time All-Big Ten player, 2-time All-American, 2022 freshman All-American, part of that national championship team this year for the Buckeyes. He has 27 career tackles for loss, 11.5 career sacks, coach, and 10 career pass deflections. Tyleik Williams is a special ball player. Let's talk about what you like about Tyleik Williams.
A little bit more prolific of a playmaker, as we're talking about, than we've talked about maybe with a couple of other guys. He has near superhuman quickness and speed.
Yeah.
I mean, it is cliche off the charts. You know, that's such a cliche thing, but it's to say it's off the charts, it's not even in the same room. It is where the chart is even, displayed. That's unbelievable, some of the things that he can do. Another great block destroyer and block destructor. So these guys are all very technical, craft-oriented defensive tackles. These are not guys that are just flying upfield looking for footballs and guys that are just trying to make plays in some freelanced, uber mode or uber competitive mode. These are highly coached and great football players. They're going to stay true to it. I mean, really, they are. I mean, there's only so much freelancing that even happens out of this position. Tyleik Williams is not a guy that's very guilty of that at all. Great anchor and base. You can see it right there. Real thick leg guy, real trunky kind of midsection, real good run anchor. He's got that devastating strike, heavy puncher, heavy-handed, strong, really knows how to throw those hands and devastate a blocker that way. He does play the reach well. We talked about a couple of Wolverines that may struggle with that block every now and again, especially the guy we just talked about. That's something Tyleik Williams does very, very well. He's a very bullish, tough competitor inside. He gets interior football play and how violent and physical it is and how you have to keep your shoulders square. He gets it, and he knows how to do it well. He's also alignment and scheme versatile. He is. He can move around the formation a little bit. The Buckeyes did it. I think he's a little more successful the further in he is, perhaps as that 3 technique inward, 3, 2, 1, 0 in that general area, and the different eye techniques that there are inside of that. He definitely, is probably most successful there, but he has got some versatility. He was a big time run stopper in college. He was a big time run stopper for the Buckeyes, and a prolific one at that. Drew, he is number 4 for a reason. What are we talking about with Tyleik that he's got to get figured out?
Yeah, you're right, Coach. And he can over pursue and sometimes jeopardize scheme integrity. So again, another guy that's athletically so gifted, they sometimes
he has freelanced a little bit.
Yeah, and and he's a capable guy, obviously, but in the NFL, that'll kill you. So you've got to have scheme and you got to hold your be gap responsible and maintain that scheme integrity. It's very important. He's shown somewhat of an inconsistent pad level. So again, it's not necessarily because of fatigue. Again, we're talking about big guys, but it's a little inconsistent. So it's more about fundamentals and sticking to always being disciplined. And I think that's something he can work on, something he can be coached on. He can get caught hanging on blocks a little bit. As strong as he is and as fast as he is, that kind of surprised me a little bit. But you can see it on tape, and again, something he needs to work on. He's almost a full-time bull rusher, so he's got to develop a little bit of a nuance to his game. I'll talk about that in a second here. He needs to develop a pass rush plan to be a 3-down lineman in the NFL. I don't doubt Tyleik Williams can start immediately, but I have doubts whether he's going to be the guy on 3rd down that you want out there. But 1st and 2nd down, 4th down all day long. Is he just a run plugger long term? Again, time will tell. But at the end of the day, Coach, if Tyleik Williams is just a run plugger with that athleticism, we may be, he reminds me, he's bigger, I think, but he reminds me a lot of Aleem McNeil in terms of what he's physically capable of. He's a little bigger too. A lot to like about Tyleik Williams. I would love to see him in Detroit. Me personally, that's the guy I've kind of been looking at. He's special, Coach.
Yeah, and his floor, if you're telling me that Tyleik Williams, barring injury, at the very, very least is going to be DJ Reader. Yeah, I think you would sign up for that all day long. That is a fit for the Detroit Lions. It'd be, a guy that could take one of those depth role positions and really make the defensive line more robust in his rookie year, just to become the starter in year 2 when DJ Reader, probably leaves via free agency or flips roles and signs like a 1 year as a depth piece to try to finish things up. That's a very likely scenario. And I do think there's some things to like about Tyleik Williams' play as compared to Kenneth Grant. I think Kenneth Grant plays even a little stronger, and I think has a little bit I guess connection to block destruction and that kind of thing, and definitely very scheme oriented. I think Tyleik Williams could be a little bit more dynamic, but Kenneth Grant does make his plays. He can make some things really, really impressively. Tyleik's going to hunker down. He's going to hunker down. He's going to hunker down. He's going to hunker down. And, that could limit him in the NFL a little bit. I tell you what, though, Drew, I think you're right. I think of guys that you want the Detroit Lions to look at. I have mine, too, in different other position groups. For me, it's Jihad Campbell as a linebacker. If we're going to talk about the defensive tackle position, I like your call as well here with Tyleik Williams.
And again, it's because I am very confident he'll be there, and he's just a very viable option at a position they need. So, let's see what happens on.
He's a fit at 28.
Absolutely, Coach. Let's talk about 60. Oh, definitely. He goes there. We've seen stranger things have happened, right? But I don't think that'll happen. But yeah, we've seen it. Let's talk about our number 5 prospect, Coach.
Yeah, we're talking about Derek Harmon. We're not leaving too far here, Drew. He's from just down the road.
Yeah.
6'5", 310-pound junior from Detroit City. He is a Detroit native, played at Loyola High School. So he's a product of the Catholic League, the smaller division, which doesn't usually produce a lot of high-level prospects, real good football teams, but not a lot of high-level prospects. But Derek Harmon certainly is one of those prospects. He is a transfer from Michigan State University. He was a Coach Tucker recruit and was part of Mel Tucker's Michigan State Spartans tenure. And he was a highly successful player there, playing in 28 games for the Spartans, and was a freshman All-American at MSU. So Derek really got off the ground. Wore number 41 for Michigan State. Kind of was a unique, play. He was headed in this direction, obviously, while he was in East Lansing as well. Transferred to Eugene, Oregon, and was a 2024 All Big Ten player for the Ducks, and started for them and was a highly productive and disruptive player. We're talking about a guy that had 17 career tackles for loss and 72 plus career quarterback hurries. So this is a guy that has been very, very much in the backfield, and he is a very, very productive pass rusher. Drew, talk to us about Mr. Harmon's strengths.
Lots to talk about here, Coach. And the first thing is he processes and destroys blocks very well. Almost a necessity. I would say it is a necessity to be a successful high-level defensive tackle in the NFL, and Derek Harmon has that. He has a big-time anchor, and he's a power striker inside. He's really tailor-made for college 3 technique, and there's no question about that. It's all over the tape. He's a big-time bull rusher, and he's been that way in the Big Ten. He didn't leave the Big Ten. Oregon's in the Big Ten. In case some of you are like, you're crazy, there's still that Pac-12. Oh, sort of. But anyways, yeah, it's just strange to me still. But Derek Harmon.
He never left the Big Ten. Derek Harmon, he always was in the Big Ten.
He's always in the Big Ten. Very good awareness inside, football IQ, right? Feels and attacks blocking schemes very well. So again, he's able to recognize and is able to destroy blocks. That's so critical. So not only is he physically gifted, but he's also a very smart player. Big, strong, heavy-handed inside player. And Coach, he's super competitive, and he's a block battler. He's got a great motor. So much to like about Derek Harmon. I like the 6'5" height and being over 310 pounds and being that athletic. It's great. What's he got to work on, Coach?
Well, again, it's really not a weakness. As a guy that, is a fan of defensive line play and a coach of defensive line play, being a block destroyer is a good thing. That's a very good thing. But, he's not a juicy stat line guy. I mean, I said 72 quarterback hurries, but that's hurries. Those are like base hits. Those are not doubles. Those are not home runs. He's not making huge, gigantic plays for loss on third down or on second down or anything like that. He's a guy that is making sure things are framed in front and trying to reduce, gains of any kind. He's worth his weight in gold for that. However, he's not going to make as many plays as maybe some other guys will. He's prolific in creating hurries, but he does not hit home very much. He like I said, he's kind of a singles hitter. And, hey, I mean, every lineup needs a singles hitter. But if you're a lineup of singles hitters, you're going to struggle producing runs. And what that would mean in football, getting back, into football is you're going to have a hard time getting off the field on third down.
Yeah.
You're going to have a hard time getting it, so you got to have guys that can hit home. And that's something that Derek Harmon has not necessarily shown the greatest production in between East Lansing or in Eugene. He's got to expand and become a more diverse pass rush guy. He's got to develop more of a plan. He's got to be more technical. He's got to work on this. He's got to work on a repertoire. He's got to become comfortable at it, and he's got to be able to apply it and execute it, because you can't just bull rush all day long in the NFL and think you're going to be very successful. That's just not the way it works. Also can struggle with his high get off. He can come out of his stance high and kind of be a little upright. That he's going to get taken on a few rides if he does that. You want to line up in between Mr. Zeitler and Mr. Sewell and do that. Well, you might want to try that. That might be something that you think you can get away with, but it also might be something that gets you for a long ride and on your back eventually. So that's something that's going to have to be a part of his work as well. He's got more of a whiff rate than some of the other defensive tackles, which means he misses tackles, which it's not a high yield tackle position. But I mean, if you get tackle opportunities, typically as a defensive lineman, that means somebody ran into you. Usually that's what that means. And if you're not finishing those kinds of tackles, that's something you got to improve upon. You got to take what's given to you too, especially if someone's going to run into you. He can cool off and be kind of a hanger for, and hang on blocks and kind of ghost away and just kind of play the game and go through the motions a little bit when he tires a little bit. So I think he's a rotational piece. This is somebody that's, definitely grows higher and slower the more sustained reps he gets. That explosiveness does draw back. It does for almost all players, Drew. It does for almost all players. But I see Derek Harmon as a rotating guy well into that rookie deal. Could Derek Harmon be a starter? He absolutely could. I think he's a rotator. I think this guy gets into day two very early. I think he's a second-round pick, but I think he gets into day two.
Yeah, he ran a good 4.95 40 at the combine. It'd be 6'5", 310. Impressive. Not the 4.65 that we talked about with Williams, but very, very serviceable in that respect. So yeah, very
Sean Robinson, like
a
pro football player, but maybe not the most dynamic.
Exactly. That's a great comparison, Coach. Great comparison. All right, the number 6 prospect on our list, and man, I like this guy, Deion Walker out of UK, University of Kentucky, 6'7", 340 pounds, and he's a junior. Just look at that picture right there. That's a big, big man. That is a big man. He's a native Detroiter, like you talked about, out of Cass Tech, 2-time team captain, 3-time All-SEC, All-American in 2023, freshman All-American in 2022. He has 22 career tackles for loss, 15 career sacks, 12 career pass deflections, and 77 career quarterback hurries. Coach Deion Walker gets it done, and he gets it done in a big way because he's a big man. He's a big man. Let's talk about what you like.
Yeah, so this Cass Tech technician is a seasoned battle-tested veteran out of the SEC. He's played a lot of football. He went down to Lexington for a reason, because it was going to get him on the field early. He had opportunities to go to Columbus. He had opportunities to go to East Lansing. He had opportunities to go to Ann Arbor. But in the end, either there was something that they didn't quite see, or Deion Walker knew it was going to take some time to get on the field at those destinations. So he chose to go down to a good mid-level SEC program like Kentucky, and he got that playing time, and it really worked into his advantage. Another guy that's outstanding in block destruction. We've talked about 5 guys that are exceptional at destroying blocks and reducing plays. And he's another guy that does that, brings tremendous power in his bull rush technique. He is a different kind of a bull rusher. He is going to extend and stonewall and gain ground through his bull rush a little differently than some other guys are going to in a good way. Again, he's a field general. He has played a ton of football in that SEC as an elite level competitor. Absolute space eater. This guy is going to take up a lot of room out there. And at the very least, he's going to do that. He does have great athleticism for his size. I mean, he can really move quite well. I mean, he's kind of a unicorn in the way he can move, within that frame. He's really a fluid moving guy at 6'7", 340. Very impressive get off and explosiveness out of his stance. But Drew, he's not the number one prospect for a reason. What are some things Deon Walker does not do that is not in a feather in his cap per se?
Yeah, and you see it on tape, an inconsistent motor. So I don't think he takes plays off, but I think he gets fatigued quick, but then he's able to recover. But you see that on tape, maybe. Is that what it is? I'm not sure, but that's what it looks like. So that could be an issue. Difficulty sustaining reps. So again, there it is. Is he playing? I guess is his frame handling, his size, I guess would that be a proper way to say that, Coach? Is he playing too big? That's kind of what it looks like a little bit at times. I don't know, but at times he's dominant. So maybe just a aerobic issue, or he's got to get some just get better wind. I don't know, better endurance. But that can be coached up. I think he's got so much talent and ability that can be coached up. He's guilty of hanging on blocks when he tires. So again, there's that domino effect, right? A very high regular pad level. And you can see it even in this picture here. He's got that kind of look. It's just, he's a huge guy, 6'7". It's very difficult to maintain a very good low pad level, especially when you're that tall. He's going to have to work on it though. Extremely raw, despite all the reps and all the coaching he has gotten. He's still kind of raw. So that's what's intriguing about him, though, because there's so much potential there. So there's a solid floor here, but the ceiling is really, really high for Deon Walker. But it's will he get there? That's the question. Get off fades with sustained reps. So again, we're not talking about a 3-down guy here, and then that's really what we're saying. And he needs to be a better hand technician. Is he a feast or famine prospect? Kind of can look that way, Coach, because if he's tiring that much, that's not going to improve over time unless you do something different. Your thoughts on Walker in terms of where you think he might fall in the draft?
Yeah, probably day 2. I mean, he's just that good of a prospect. I mean, yeah, I think he does. He's a round 2 player. I just don't know if we're ever going to see him as a starter, or if he is, it's a starter in name only, because he can give you 2, 3, 4 reps max. If he gives you 4, he's going to be sitting for the next 4. So he's just a guy that is not shown to be a very long sustaining threat on the field. And that is an indictment. We're going to talk about other guys here that are kind of in that same category. Deon Walker's a phenomenal football player, but he's a guy that's going to give you what he can, then he's going to get off the field. Give you what he can, then he's going to get off the field. He's going to have some great length. He's going to be able to contribute, an extra point and field goal block as well. Definitely going to have a role in the NFL. He's going to probably play for a good 5 to 7 years, barring injury. Don't know if it'll all be for one team or not. But, I am intrigued by Deon Walker. Where do I see? I see him in day 2. Do I see him as a fit with the Detroit Lions? I want to look at some other guys, despite how awesome he is in regards to his size and his ability and where he's from. Because there are certain things that would really make him a nice fit here.
Absolutely. Great synopsis, Coach. Let's talk about our number 7 guy.
We're heading to Austin, Texas. Going to stay in the SEC, Drew. 6'5", 320-pound senior for the Longhorns, Alfred Collins. Guy played a lot of football for them. He was a 5-star prospect out of Bastrop, Texas. Another 4'9", 540 guy. That seems to be a very popular number.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a benchmark for speed, with the exception of Tyreek Williams, who's just a little bit faster. Played in 63 games for the Longhorns. We talked about Jack Kaiser at the linebacker position for Notre Dame, playing 70. Well, just behind him here is Alfred Collins at 63, that is impressive. That is impressive. He was 2023 All Big 12 and 2024 All SEC. So he's one of these guys that's gotten to be an all-conference player in both Power 5 conferences. He's a 2024 All-American, 18 career tackles for loss, 13 career pass deflections, so another guy that was active in the pass rush, with 45-plus career quarterback hurries. Alfred Collins, exceptional football player from an elite program. What are some more factors about Alfred that we should know about here, Drew?
Yeah, lots to like here, Coach. Tremendous run anchor. Has outstanding discipline and integrity. Fits within the scheme. He fits within the scheme, and I like to hear that, and I like to see that on tape. Gap discipline, huge. Alfred Collins, a very gap discipline player out there. Tremendous block recognition and awareness. So again, high football IQ and a disciplined player. And he's a longer prospect at defensive tackle. He plays long, and that's a beautiful thing. And he knows how to use that length. He's got that leverage. He's very disruptive against the pass. Despite the fact that he's not necessarily hitting home a lot, not getting the sacks, he's a disturber. We talked about that, tackles for losses and pass for, and quarterback hurries. He's got unreal physicality and strength versus the run. He is a great run defender. He's a two-gap extraordinaire at Texas, and Coach, there's a lot to like about Alfred Collins. He's a very safe, effective player, but what's he need to work on, and what are some of the red flags you saw?
Well, he's older. I mean, so those guys we talked about at the top of the list are 21 years old. He's already 24. So when you're talking about a guy that's a little bit older, I mean, that descent is going to take place a little bit. We're going to talk about a guy that's going to come down a little bit here. And he's pretty linear. He's not maybe as laterally mobile as some of these other prospects we talked about. So he doesn't give you some of those lateral mobility where he can do the stunting and the slanting and cover ground that way more comfortably. He plays what's in front of him a little bit more. He lacks a lot of lateral movement skills. He's just kind of like an interior plugger type of player. He's not near as twitchy and athletically explosive and dynamic as some of these other guys. He's not Walter Nolan. He's not a guy that plays that way. He is very much your meat and potatoes defensive tackle in regards to his technical ability and the ground that he covers. He's not really evolved, technically as far as, being a real nuanced player. He's going to give you what he's going to give you, and it's going to be good, but it's not something that's really all that dynamic. So you need for playing 63 games, he's a very vanilla player, technically. He needs to become a pro football technician. He's going to have to add some tools to his arsenal, especially in the pass rush. He's got to show something in that area. He can't just be a guy that goes out there and gives them a rep. There's just not a place for somebody in this league long-term that way. Yeah. So I don't know how high Alfred Collins' ceiling is, Drew. He's certainly a talented guy. He's certainly somebody that's getting drafted. I would probably say he's a third-round selection just because there are these red flags on maybe some of his dynamic ability. But is he a guy that can play a rookie contract out? Certainly. He certainly can.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't know if that's my personal opinion. I don't know if he's necessarily someone I'm looking for in Detroit. But at the end of the day, I think he's a very safe pick. And if you can get him late in the third round, they're picking at 103rd. If they don't address the position before that, which would surprise me, he's in play there, I would think, at least. He may go a little higher than that. We'll see. Our number 8 prospect right now, TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle out of South Carolina, the Gamecocks, 6'5", 300-pound junior. Coach, he's from Marion, South Carolina, so he stayed at home. Guess what his 40 run time was? 4.95. There you go. Yeah, there were several players that posted that number. Hey, and I love it. If you're 300 pounds and you can run a sub 540, you're all right. You're all right. A 9.4 broad jump. That was impressive. South Carolina Player of the Year in basketball in high school. So this is an athlete here and a 2-time all SEC player. 2024 SEC Interior Defender of the Year, 2024 All-American, is a highly decorated defensive tackle, 17.5 career tackles for loss, 15 quarterback hits in the last 2 seasons, 43 career hurries, and 12 career pass deflections. Coach, TJ Sanders he disturbs things in the passing game. What do you like about him?
He hits those extra base hits in the pass rush. He hits some of those extra. He's a doubles, triples homer guy. He's got great get off and explosiveness out of his stance. High level success against high level competition in the SEC. It's an elite caliber athlete. He's alignment and scheme versatile. He's a longer, leaner defensive tackle. So we're talking about a guy that's going to be 3 to 5. I think that's where you're going to want to see him play a lot of his football in that 3 to 5 technique range. Like I said, he's in very impressive out of multiple alignments. He's got that basketball athletic ability. He's a very fluid mover, very, very, very good with his hands and moving, like ripping through picks and getting open and getting that good post position. He shows some of that capability. He's an excellent pass rusher first. But he does have a heavy anchor when challenged. They ran at him too, and he certainly was very, very productive that way. He's a good hand technician. We're talking about a really functional, a real strong, high functional athlete. One of the better athletes in the position group, Drew. Very, very athletic guy. What are some things that aren't quite in TJ Sanders' corner?
Yeah, Coach, an inconsistent motor again. So again, a taller, bigger guy. Now he's not nearly as big as Deion Walker, but he's pretty tall. He's taller than most of the prospects we talked about, and I think that contributes a bit because he's faded off at times with extended reps, and he's lost technique and focus, and when he's freelance. So got to be careful there. But he's a pass rush extraordinaire, and you almost kind of take with the good with the bad in that regard. To be a pass rush specialist at D tackle is a special thing. Not many are very good at it, or very effective, I should say. And TJ Sanders has that potential, but again, he's got to be when he freelance, he's got to be careful. You got to pick your spots, and you better have a hell of a football IQ to do that. Up and down with the pad level. Again, a taller guy going to struggle with that, and he does. Much better pass rusher than run stopper. Not saying that's a bad thing, but in the NFL, you got to be able to stop the run of a D tackle. If you're a pass rusher, in my view, that's a bonus. You must stop the run. But if you can rush the passer on top of it, awesome. You're a Pro Bowl caliber guy. He's got to make sure he can work on it and get better with that. He struggled mightily versus double teams. And it's on tape. So that's, again, not a block. We're not talking about a block destroyer here, right? Fairly lean for the NFL interior. He is 300, but to be that tall, like you said, Coach, got a leaner frame. So that could be a problem against those heavy-handed centers and guards in the NFL. Is he just a pass rusher in the NFL? Well, we'll find out. But like you said, he did get run at in college a bit, Coach. So, we'll see. But I think TJ Sanders is a possible late day 2, early day 3 guy, because the pass rush element is something that's going to catch some eyes, I believe, amongst offensive coordinators and head coaches in the NFL. Coach, you got a dark horse candidate we need to talk about. Let's go.
Yeah, this is my guy, Thor Griffith out of Louisville, 6'2", 320. Louisville via Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the Harvard University. He's a Portsmouth, New Hampshire native. He transferred from Harvard. Yes, he holds an economics degree from Harvard University. 33.5 career tackles for loss, 13.5 career sacks for the Crimson. He's a 3-time All-Ivy League player, 2-time FCS All-American. He was a freshman FCS All-American. He played in all 13 games this year in his 1 year at Louisville. He's one of the best Ivy League interior defenders of all time and considered one of the best Ivy League defensive football players in the last decade. He bench pressed 225 pounds 45 times.
Wow.
He was not invited to the combine. The highest number at the combine, I believe you said, was 29, Drew?
At the position, yeah, and I think 32 was Luke Kandra from the guard from Cincinnati. He had 32. Yep.
Thor had something to say about that.
Yeah.
Thor had something to say about that. Great get off and explosiveness. He's a nasty physical run stopper, versatile nose guard type of line, type player. He's got to work on pass rush. It's something he's not going to get. He's undersized. He's smaller at 6'2", 320. He's got a bit of a whiff rate for an interior defensive lineman. That's where he belongs. He's a nose guard. He's probably a day 3 player, but I think he's a guy that makes a 53 man, is going to give someone depth at nose, Drew.
Yeah, that jumped off the page, 45 reps. That's incredible. JJ Pegues is the guy, got coach from Ole Miss, 6'2", 325-pound junior. defensive tackle / running back. Interesting positional combination, right? He's a 4-star recruit out of Oxford, so he stayed home. Oxford, Mississippi native. He transferred from Auburn, so he did leave for a little bit, but he came back home. He's a converted tight end. He also served as a jumbo package running back last season at Ole Miss. So very athletic guy. 7 rushing touchdowns in 2024. So he was like their fridge, basically. He was the 2024 Chucky Mullins Award winner. He was also a 2024 All-American and All-SEC defensive tackle. 29 career tackles for loss, 13.5 tackles for loss last year alone, 8 career offensive touchdowns, coach, and 50 quarterback hurries. This guy's a pretty athletic guy. He's a rare two-way talent that really impacted both sides of the ball in college. Very stout run anchor. He's got excellent functional athleticism, obviously. He's great balance and movement skills. And he's a high-level competitor. He plays with a strong football and sports in general IQ. He's a special player, but he's not the total package, right? He's got to develop as a pass rusher in the NFL if he's going to really translate his game there fully. He does struggle against double teams. He's still a project regarding technique. So as dynamic as he was in college, sometimes it's better to hone your craft at one specific spot. He'll do that in the NFL, I believe, at defensive tackle. And will need an acclimation period in the NFL. So he's not a plug-and-play guy necessarily, but there's a lot of upside there, Coach. That's the list, and an impressive list at that. Coach, your final thoughts before we wrap it up.
I know we had a long one. This was a lot of great players to talk about in this position group. I think we talked about another Detroit Lion. I really do. Yeah. I think somewhere in this group we featured and talked about a Detroit Lion, and certainly a position group we need to draw from.
Yeah, no question. And there's one other name I want to mention because he's from the MAC, Darius Alexander from Toledo. He's a nice player.
Really climbed up the ladder too.
Yeah, and he showed out at the combine, and we had him on our radar. He didn't make our top 20, but he definitely showed out at the combine. So watch for him. Thanks, Coach. Beautiful job as always. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Don't forget to do that. Don't forget to like the video. Content every week coming your way. We're about halfway through our draft coverage leading up to the NFL draft in April 2025 in Green Bay. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching. We will talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on YouTube so you don't miss an episode at the Sports Peninsula Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter X. Just look for @SportsP Podcast, and follow us to keep up on sports around the great state of Michigan and beyond. You can also catch our show every Saturday night at 7 p.m. on the ESEN Network channel as part of Roku. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.